Hey everyone, welcome to another Finding Avalon Tantalizing Tidbit. This time we're going to start part 1 of our cruising tip series. It's a series that we thought we'd put together because we get a lot of questions about general cruising and the cruising grounds which we've explored throughout the last year. We've actually been going pretty fast, so we've had the opportunity to explore the Mediterranean, the Atlantic crossing, parts of the Caribbean, Panama, Galapagos, Pacific crossing, and now while we're in French Polynesia. So we thought we'd put like a general series together of just really helpful tips that we wish people had told us along the way, and hopefully will really help you when you're planning out your journeys and your cruising grounds. So we thought we'd start with the Mediterranean because this is where we started our journey and where we definitely learned a lot about cruising. Also, I know it's halfway through the Mediterranean season now, but there's definitely some helpful hints here for all those that are starting now and also thinking about finishing up their season and possibly leaving the Med. So what are the great parts about sailing the Mediterranean? I think for us, it was about being able to immerse yourself in the culture. It's kind of unlike anywhere else in the world where you can sail around and anchor at the foot of these amazing cities, dinghy ashore, and there's just restaurants, bars, shops, historical tours, castles. It really is the opportunity to immerse yourself in those cities and the culture. You also have that unique opportunity to anchor or dock in the heart of these cities. It's something, as we've now been cruising further out of the Med, that we actually find is really difficult to get close to cities with your boat. The other beautiful thing about sailing the Med is you can very easily island hop and just do coastal sailing from city to city in daylight. You don't have to do too many overnighters. You can just cruise your way down the coastline, and there's some pretty logical stops in half-day sails and whatnot. So really take advantage of the day sailing, except for sort of extended crossings, maybe for example from Greece to Malta and things like that. But cruising Croatia, Montenegro, Italy, Greece, Malta, these are all super achievable just to do in little chunks throughout the day and made for really pleasant sailing. It's really well charted there in the Med, so you can definitely trust your charts. We were using Navionics and we found them really accurate. So that also takes that stress away of not trusting your charts, which we're definitely finding a little bit now that we're further down the track in the South Pacific. But yeah, the charts in the Med were really accurate. The Mediterranean is also just really well organized for cruisers. There's really good opportunity, there's great resources. There's a marina always just around the corner, a chandlery just on the road there. There is generally mechanics and all kinds of people to help. So it's a really well organized system for cruising. We also found it super easy for friends and family to come visit. It was a lot more achievable for them to fly into Europe from Oz or around the world, as opposed to trying to get to more obscure places in the Caribbean or the South Pacific and whatnot. So definitely take advantage of inviting your friends and family. It also allows them the chance to experience the culture in the cities. And I think the sailing itself is pretty tame and manageable for the novice guests that also might be getting a little seasick here and there. And the opportunity to just step on land at a moment's notice. We also found the Med a really great place to be able to leave your boat in a marina and do little multi-day inland trips if you hire a car or even get an airline ticket or take a train. It's a good opportunity to do that because there weren't so many reliable marinas in the Caribbean and you're offering leaving your boat at anchor, which you're probably not going to do overnight. But in the Med, leaving that boat in the marina, generally pretty cheap, was a really great opportunity to explore inland and maybe do some trips that you won't otherwise get to do once you leave the Med. It's also a really good testing ground to test your boat and how you're going to start living aboard. It's the perfect opportunity to test gear, to test systems, to see how much water you need, how much gas you need, fuel, all that kind of stuff, because resources are close. So if you somewhat get it wrong, that's okay. You can just fill up with water like around the corner, or you can fill up with gas, or I'm sure there's a part or whatever you need to fix or optimize that system on the boat. So really think of it as a testing ground for your boat. I guess for us, the negative side of the Med was the limited sea life and ocean activities that we could do. Xanth and I are really into our surfing, kiting, freediving, and the sea life in the Med is pretty underwhelming. There's really not a lot of coral, not a lot of fish. It's kind of just algae covered rocks a lot of the time. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely a few little gems here and there, but in general, we found it a little bit uninspiring. I thought I'd be doing a lot more kite surfing in the Med. The breeze is pretty unreliable as well. It's either 4 knots or 40 knots, so it was quite challenging to find spots to kite. It was also really hard to find places to launch a kite, simply because a lot of the coastline is just jagged rocks and whatnot, which is just not suitable, so you're always launching off the boat, and that has its own little set of problems as well. So I wasn't doing as much kiting as I'd hoped, and obviously there's very limited surfing. There's a little bit of surfing in Sardinia. Yeah, we found it quite limiting for the ocean sports side, but hey, it kind of offset with the amazing culture and cities and life that you can immerse yourself there. It was also super limited fishing. I mean, we actually only had a hand reel at the time, but yeah, again, just limited for the ocean sports. So the next thing to think about is immigration while cruising the Mediterranean. I guess the first big part is the Schengen countries and non-Schengen countries. If you're a nationality that is part of the Schengen Agreement, which counts most countries, so me being an Aussie and Xanth being a Brit, she was lucky enough that the Schengen didn't apply for her, but it definitely applied for me. And basically, you have 90 days to spend in the Schengen zone. There's definitely a few safe havens which are outside that Schengen zone, like Croatia and Turkey, Tunisia, different spots for sure. Go and do your research. Also, you'll need to be careful with your boat and its registration, because I know for our boat, being an Aussie flagged boat, it could only spend 18 months in the Schengen zone and European zone as well, and you had to leave and come back every 18 months. Obviously, we didn't have to worry about that, but it was something in the back of our mind if we decided to do 2 years or something like that in the Med. A really important consideration is also the cost of entering and exiting these countries. We started in Croatia, and we got the shock of our life on how expensive it was to get a cruising permit, to clear into those countries, and to even leave those countries, and to even leave Croatia. I think it actually cost us almost $450 or something for 30 days to cruise through Croatia. And yeah, being our first country, we were really considering whether we could afford continuing to cruise the Med at a cost like that. We soon realized that it was just Croatia that was really expensive. Greece also was relatively expensive. I can't really remember the exact cost of Greece. But once you're in that Schengen zone, it was free. Like, to go from Italy to Spain to France to Malta, all that was free. So definitely consider how long you're going to spend outside those zones, because it will cost you money. But then the offset is time. An important part of the immigration as well was having a skipper's license. I ummed and ahed for a long time before we set off whether I was going to go and get an ICC license, which is just like an international recognized skipper's license. And it definitely paid dividends to have. I know in Montenegro, they were definitely asking for it. You had to show some kind of form that you had a skipper's license. Greece and Croatia all required it. I think I probably could have got away with a simple motorboat license from Australia, which I already had. But hey, I didn't want to run the risk. So if you have the opportunity to go and get a license like that, then definitely go do it. And if you don't, then definitely plan around where you will be going and research the requirements as to what kind of licenses you may need. In terms of actually arriving and departing these countries, it's a long process, and it is something which we again did not expect. You take it for granted when you can arrive in a country via plane, because it is so easy. You go passports, grab your bags, go through customs, in a taxi, out. It's done in an hour. We often spent days trying to check in and out of countries simply because it's just a hard process, and every country and every city has a slightly different process, with the port authority at one end of the town, customs at another, police at another, and you just got to spend your time doing a full loop to get all the required stamps and paperwork and whatnot. So my biggest recommendation is definitely allocate a day to check in and a day to check out. Also, really do your research before you arrive as to where these places are. Sometimes you'll be arriving without internet, and it's a real pain in the neck trying to figure out where to go. So take some screenshots as to where the anchorage is going to be, and maybe even put in the route to where the port authority is going to be, and the police station and the customs, and that'll really help you out for when you arrive, that you know exactly where to go, and it just makes it so much easier. If you can as well, things like Noonsight are really great assets and are really great little pots of knowledge of what these buildings look like. Maybe they've changed and whatnot, because they're often badly marked, and it's not always straightforward as to where to go. So, as I said, definitely research before you arrive, and even contact marinas and whatnot. Because, for example, when we arrived in Malta, we were able to do it all at the marina, but you're only able to do it 3 days a week between 10 and 2. So it didn't really matter for us. We could turn up, and I think we turned up on a Wednesday. They weren't open till a Thursday. They were fine with that. You could do it all in one spot. I think it cost us €5, done and dusted. As opposed to Greece, which we had to go to the port authority on one part of the island. We then had to go to the customs at another, come back to the port authority, and then go to the police station. It definitely took us a whole day to go and do that, and to get our heads around where to go. On that note, I guess the longer we've cruised, the more relaxed we've got about checking in and checking out. I don't mean that we don't do it, but when we first started, the second we anchored that boat, we were on land, going to do our best to check in and whatnot. We soon realized that it's pretty relaxed in most places, where, especially if you've arrived after a long crossing or whatnot, you might just want to give yourself a day to relax. And there might be, more pressing, important things that you need to get done. Yeah, we've definitely got a little more relaxed as we've cruised a little more to the timing of us checking in and checking out. And we've also met quite a few cruisers that have gone to the extreme end of that, where they're not checking in for weeks or even months or even at all, and they're just running the gauntlet for not checking in. I really don't recommend it, but that's immigration, guys. If you've got any other questions, chuck them in the comments below. That's part 1 of our cruising tips series. Part 2 will be continuing on with the Mediterranean. Look out for that one. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit like if you enjoyed that, and comment below if you've got any questions or any additional information that could be really helpful to our fellow sailors out there, and to myself, that I might be able to include into the next one. Also, guys, don't forget, if you want to become a patron, jump on board, link below. We try to pump out all kinds of informational videos like this for patron only. There's a bunch of tiers, bunch of different access, bunch of extra content out there. So yeah, if you're interested in this kind of stuff and you want to support the journey, get on that. And if you noticed, I got some super sweet tees on. Jump onto the link below to our merch site. And yeah, if you want to buy some Finding Avalon gear, get on board.
Looking sexy!
See you guys.